So, welcome to Beauty of Colors podcast. Rebecca, it's great to have you on the show.
Thanks so much for having me. It's great to be here.
So, Rebecca, tell the listeners about you and what is your story? What drove you into becoming a writer?
What a great question. I think I was always writing my whole life, as soon as I learned how, but I never focused on it as a career. I would sort of use writing in the service of other interests and other passions. So it really took me until I was in my 30s to discover that writing nonfiction and then eventually writing fiction was something that felt like a wonderful fit for me. And it was this sort of midlife passion that I just discovered only recently.
Wow, nice. So, you said that you write both fiction and nonfiction. Is that correct?
Yeah, my first book was a memoir that I co-wrote with my brother. It's called Where War Ends, and it was a story of him returning home to the United States after serving in combat in Iraq. And then my second book is a novel, so completely different from the first book. It's a time travel adventure love story. So it couldn't be more different. But there are some similar themes in both.
Okay. So, before you started writing, Rebecca, did you do anything else in life or you just went straight into writing? That was your passion and you started doing it at a young age and you said, okay, that's what I'm going to do. Or were you doing something else before?
I wanted to be an actress, or no, I was an actress. I went to school for theater and majored in musical theater performance. And then I moved to Los Angeles and I worked in film and TV. I did some producing, I did some writing, and I ended up writing more to give my fellow actors and I something to shoot, something to film. And so I started doing that, and then people started asking me, "Can you write something for me? Can you write something for me?" And whenever I would be writing, just everything would sort of open up and things would go easier for me. And whereas when I was acting, it was just one obstacle after another. And so eventually I said, maybe I should go in the direction that life is nudging me and make writing more of a profession than just a hobby.
So, what is exactly like who are you writing for? Because you said your first book was a memoir and the second book that you wrote was with your brother. You're a co-author. Is that correct?
The first one was with my brother. So I sort of got my start. He had the story and I was the writer. And so we worked together to tell his story. And when I was done with that, I thought I'd like to work on something that is whatever I want it to be, using my own imagination and not constrained by anything really. I also write in my work life, in my day job. And so most everything I write is constrained by either there's business needs or there's legal restraints. We can't say this or we can't say that. So when I was writing fiction, I wanted the freedom to make a story whatever I wanted it to be, with the characters I wanted, the world I wanted, and everything that I was interested in. So what came out was a sort of a sci-fi fantasy love story about an ordinary woman with an extraordinary memory who is chosen as the world's first female time traveler.
Okay. And what's the name of that book?
It's the 23rd Hero. It's right here. Yep. And it just came out. And it's in the world of the story, people are able to go back in time to prevent climate change before it starts. So the hero in the title, the heroes are people who they go back to particular points in time and they change the course of history by manipulating the outcome of certain harmful environmental inventions or practices. But the core of the book is really a love story.
Okay. Does the book have some of I would say some of your life in it, or is it just pure science fiction? Is it does it have some of you in there?
I think yes, it's my heart and soul is on every page, but it's not recreating my life so much as sort of the opposite of my life. So I wrote it when I was going through a painful divorce, And I wrote the love story that I wished I was living. And I gave my main character, Sloane, I gave her freedoms that I, as a single parent, didn't have. So I was sort of stuck at home with two very young children. And meanwhile, she's traveling across centuries. And my marriage had ended. Meanwhile, she's falling in love. So it's almost giving myself sort of medicine, an antidote to my real life. So it's written in response to my life, but it's the opposite of my life.
Wow, that's powerful. So, Rebecca, how can the listeners connect with you? Where can they get a copy of your book? Where can they find your book? What is your website? Do you have any speaking engagements coming up to talk about your book? Anything like that?
Yeah, it's great. So my website is Rebecca N. Writes, WRITES.com. That's the same handle on Instagram, Threads, all the socials at Rebecca N. Writes. You can get The 23rd Hero wherever you buy your books. So Amazon, Barnes and Noble. Bookshop is great because it supports local independent bookstores. You can also go to your favorite indie bookstore and ask them if they don't already have it on the shelves. You can ask them to order it for you, and that will support your local community as well. And my next stop I just finished a 4-stop book tour, and my next stop will be in Waco, Texas, on November 6th at Fabled Bookshop. If anyone is in Texas and wants to come out.
Oh, sounds nice. So, Rebecca, do you plan on going on and writing more books, almost like the ones that you've wrote, or are you going to change the genre a little bit?
Good question. I think since I was so wildly different in the first two, I'm just going to keep that going. So nothing predictable. The next book I'm working on is also fiction. It's a romantic comedy. I noticed that when I was working on The 23rd Hero, I got the best feedback on the love scenes and on the humor, and so I wanted to sort of take that and harness it and really focus in. So my next book would be that love story with lots of comedy.
So, Rebecca, do you have any last words for the listeners about the process of writing and not giving up? A lot of people want to start this writing process, but some of them do have this, keeping them back. What can you say to the listeners in order to push them forward and say, hey, if I can do it, you can as well?
Yeah, I think you don't need anyone's permission to write. We're all writers in some sense and creators. And you also don't compare your first draft with someone else's 200th draft. When we read a book, when we get a book from the library, or we read a book from, we buy it from a bookstore, that is, even if the author had written it in 6 months, it's still years and years and collaboration with editors and proofreaders and copy editors. It's a huge process. And so don't compare yourself to someone who had the support of a team and many, many years of revisions. It's okay to be a beginner. It's okay to create something bad. It's that we have this fear of making bad art, but I think probably most art is not what we see in the movies, where someone just gets this inspiration and in this feverish 12-hour period, they just crank out a novel and it's brilliant and perfect. I don't think that happens very often in real life, but it's glamorized. We all wish that would happen, but the reality is you can be bad. It takes hard work and perseverance a little bit. Sometimes I'll just do 5, 10, 15 minutes every day if I can. Sometimes it's nothing, and that's okay too. You keep going a little at a time and give yourself permission to fail.
Wow. Well, Rebecca, what's the website again? Your website?
Rebecca, yeah, it's Rebecca N as in Nancy, Writes, WRITES.com.
Okay. Well, Rebecca, thank you for being on Beauty of Colors podcast.
My pleasure. Thanks so much.